Yeah, with all that said, let's take a look. Like I said, Michael Moore invited on MSNBC to basically make the case for why he thinks the Democrats should drop Biden or Biden should step down, depending on how it has to happen. But yeah, let's take a look.
Academy Award-winning filmmaker Michael Moore is not only calling on President Biden to drop out of the race. In a July 4th essay, he writes that it is time for Biden to step down and for Vice President Kamala Harris to take the reins. He is also host of the Rumble with Michael Moore podcast, and he joins me now. Michael, it's good to have you back on the show. You have some harsh words in this piece that you wrote, not as much of it directed at Biden, but at those around him. Explain why you see it that way.
Well, thanks for having me on. The first thing I want to say is I've been sitting in the green room, virtual green room here at MSNBC, and the Lord Almighty is actually back there, sitting in the room. And he will not tell us anything about what's going on. He's only weirdly concerned with the slump that the Yankees have been in for the last month. So but Lord, Biden just said last night, you're the decider. You decide if he stays or goes. And he's like, leave me out of this. Okay. Want me to walk on water? I can do that. Want me to turn a bunch of loaves of bread and fish into feeding thousands? I can do that. But don't ask me to get involved in this crazy election. Listen, I think that, yes, I need to start by saying, and of course, I've been very critical of President Biden, especially since October with the war. I'm very disappointed. But this individual has been the most progressive president that we've had in my lifetime. 3.5 years. You just look at the record. I don't need to go over. I hope I don't need to go over.
And by the way, guys, I will remind you that he's trying to convince Biden and the people around him to step aside. So some of this is kind of buttering up Biden to make the message easier to hear. At least that's my opinion. And yeah, Michael Moore definitely gets sometimes overly excited, or he's overly generous with the credit he gives establishment Democrats. But I do, understand why certain people are taking this approach where it's just like, who really gives a shit? But you have to appease his ego if you're going to have any success in convincing him to do the right thing here.
Yeah. See, here's the thing about Michael Moore. He wants to maintain his ability to come on a show like MSNBC and make a properly radical case, right? And I think that when you look at the policies that Michael Moore has always supported, when you look at the positions that he's taken on an issue-by-issue basis, he is always sharp as a tack. He's always on the money. He never turns his back on the working class. He never turns his back on the vulnerable people abroad in foreign countries that we're occupying or bombing. This is a man that has his human conscience at the forefront of his politics at all times. But in an effort to relate to voters, relate to people who don't always, start at the same starting point as him, he will butter them up, and he will give Biden credit for things that I wouldn't give Biden credit for, like an infrastructure bill or defeating Donald Trump, right? And being like, oh, the country needed this more than anything because he's Michael Moore's the guy that takes the threat of Donald Trump very seriously.
Yep.
So I think all of that informs his commentary. And I think it's there's an effort by people who are like on the, fringe left to try and undermine Michael Moore and make him seem like a shit lib when in reality, he's actually just a pretty normal guy. And I think he makes a great case for Joe Biden, despite the fact that he treats him like a baby and pats him on the ass a little bit on the way out.
Yeah, and it's not like Michael Moore was a Biden supporter during the primary. In case anyone forgot, he was a staunch Bernie Sanders supporter. Zach and I actually saw Michael Moore speak at a Bernie rally in Iowa the night before the Iowa caucus, and he traveled all over the country with the Bernie cohort, basically acting as a surrogate. So he's usually always on the right side of things when it comes to picking candidates. Anyway. Yeah.
Over it, for what he's done to stand up, for how he got us through COVID. He got us through COVID by using science and vaccines. He removed, and I said this back in the green room, he removed the devil in 2020. I mean, just go down the list. But the problem here is that I think there's a form of elder abuse going on here, where the Democratic Party and the people that are part of the apparatus pushing him to stay. And then he comes out and he says, I'm staying. And the family says, I'm staying. And I don't know about you, Eamon, but in spite of my criticisms about Gaza with Biden, watching the debate a week ago was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was, and it was like, imagine that was your father up there. What would you want to, I'm thinking, why isn't anybody doing anything? Why didn't they do it? Why did they even let him go out on the stage in this condition?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why they let him go out on the stage in this condition. It's exactly what he alluded to, right? The people around him, his apparatus, they know they're on the outs in the Democratic Party. Gavin and I have talked about this at length. The Jeff Zients, the Jill Bidens, the Hunter Bidens, the people who are in his immediate apparatus, they are not the favored individuals of the Democratic Party, right? Do you know why? Because none of the favored people in the Democratic Party way back in 2020 when the primary was beginning were betting on Joe Biden. All of the best people were hitching their wagon to Kamala Harris. All the best people were hitching their wagon to Pete Buttigieg, right? The Amy Klobuchar, somebody that was going to throw their hat in, that was going to be the next mantle of the Democratic Party. But there was a very, very concerted effort by the powers that be within the Democratic Party to try and force somebody to the table who wasn't Joe Biden, right? That's why they didn't go with Joe Biden immediately after the Obama administration in 2016, right? Hillary Clinton took the mantle. He was skipped over. They passed the buck because they didn't think that he was capable of doing the job. They'd seen how he'd run his presidential campaigns in the past. They didn't think he had what it took. Yep. You know what I mean? And so now these guys know that, hey, we got in here despite every odd, right? Despite every obstacle, despite the fact that this guy couldn't even campaign in 2020, let alone 2024. And they're just turtling. They're just in on the, bunker down mode where they're trying to, keep Joe Biden in there for as long as they can, despite whatever it has to do with Joe Biden, despite, how his cognitive state declines, despite the fact that these will probably be his last years on Earth, and they're having him do this shit instead of retire on a rocking chair with his family. But is everything all good, Gavin?
Oh, yeah. I was listening to the audio. It sounds a little bit like worse than it did yesterday, but it still sounded pretty listenable to me. Like it didn't sound at all unlistenable.
Weird.
So I'm not sure what the difference is.
Playing it. I thought it sounded fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, once it's the thing I always warn Gavin about. It's like once you invite somebody in, like I had a guy that was called 45 AB audio file. I was like, fuck you, dude. I'm not listening to you bitch about the audio for the rest of the time. I'm sorry if you're a long time listener, but if you name yourself audio file and you bitch about the audio, you're getting the ban for the live stream. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're all good. Let's keep listening to a bit more of the more.
Yeah.
Who's looking out for him right now? George asked those questions last night, and he had to ask it 3 or 4 times. Will you just get a checkup, a medical evaluation, a neurologist, to something doesn't seem right. And we're not doctors, but each of us, all of you watching this right now, have had or have in your life 4 grandparents and 2 parents. There's at least 6. You've got step parents and step grand. We all have seen the decline of the people we love as they get older. It's normal. It happens. That's not to say that somebody shouldn't be able to be president at 81. I don't believe that. I mean, look at Ben Franklin. Look at all the people throughout our history that did quite well into their 80s. Nancy Pelosi is older than Biden. So clearly, this is not an ageist attitude here. Right. This is more like something was wrong that night. We all saw it. We can't unsee it. And as Richard Pryor and before that Chico Marx said, who are you going to believe? Me or your own lying eyes? My eyes weren't lying. Yours weren't either, even.
It's a very...
What's a little bit baffling to me, Gavin, and I agree it was the worst we'd ever seen it on the debate stage the other night. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't the second time. This wasn't the 4th, 5th, 6th. I've seen dozens of times where Joe Biden has interacted with the public just like this, where he's forgotten where he was. Remember when he was with Emmanuel Macron maybe a few weeks ago and he tries to sit down on stage because he completely forgets where he is. He just looks around. He's standing at the podium with everybody on stage. There's a crowd and he tries to sit down. And then the people around him have to be like, no, dude, there's no chair there.
Yeah.
We've seen this writing on the wall for months and months and months. And one of the things that's frustrating about this for me and Gavin is we tried to warn everybody. We every single day, while nobody was taking us seriously at all, we were talking about how there needs to be a robust Democratic primary. We need to force people to hold Joe Biden accountable. People were like, oh, there's not going to be a primary. Wait till 2028. I was like, we don't have until 2028. Look at this fucking guy right here. You think he could beat Donald Trump? I think Donald Trump's one of the worst candidates of all time. I think he's imminently beatable. I think somebody competent that runs a decent campaign in this country would easily fucking dunk all over Donald Trump because there's so much material to go after him for. And there's already an entire term of his presidency where the people voted him out and said, you didn't accomplish what you promised us. Liar, liar, liar. Let's point to the scoreboard. Let's talk about what I'm going to do differently than what you did. It was so easy to fillet that guy for that. All people want is a return to a status quo where they can afford to go grocery shopping and pay rent, maybe buy a house by the time they're fucking 40 because they want to raise a family somewhere. You know what I'm saying? That's all that had to be offered. But Biden was incompetent of offering any message, let alone a minutely inspiring one. On top of that, he's been aiding and abetting an ethnic cleansing that we've all watched in real time on our fucking smartphones, right? So we've watched this all go down. We've begged and pleaded for them to do something about it. And now it's a little frustrating to have MSNBC hosts like this guy be like, you know what? Actually, when there's no time left to do fucking anything about it, we'll go ahead and say you guys were right all along. It's the most textbook Democrat bullshit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. The signs have been there for a long time, and not even just from visual clips and like videos or audio of Biden just declining in real time. Not even just that. If you actually look statistically, I don't think any modern American president has held even close to as few press conferences as Joe Biden has held. Like if you look at the amount of press conferences he holds and the amount of media appearances and interviews he does, it's shockingly low compared to even the next lowest. Like the next lowest is still like 3 times as much when it comes to modern American presidents. He refuses to actually go out and, take tough questions, take follow-up questions, basically perform in any environment that isn't scripted. And obviously, if you've been paying attention, you know this stuff. It's not like we just found out for the first time when we turned on that debate. But for a lot of Americans, they don't start paying attention to politics until around this time. Because that's when the drama starts heating up. That's when the presidential election horse race starts heating up. And people just tend to start tuning in. So it's very possible that a lot of the people, they might think, oh, yeah, he's old, whatever. They might have seen a clip or two, but it didn't really hit them until that debate night. Because, like I said, they just kind of thought, yeah, he's old, but he was old when he was vice president. He's always been old. When you see that debate, it's like, oh, no, he's not even just old. He's not even there. He doesn't even know what's going on.
Because I think there's also another elephant in the room here. And in all of the calls that we have seen for President Biden to step aside, the issue of what is happening or has been happening in Gaza has not been mentioned, has taken a back seat. But you address You address Gaza in your piece. And should Biden's decision making on Gaza have been a warning sign about him long before his bad debate performance, which is something that I was looking at as well and saying like, hey, there's something off in the decision making here. If you're seeing what is happening across America and still being intransigent and pursuing the same policy with no change, of course.
Intransigent. That guy just wants you to know that he paid for an Ivy League education.
I've been saying this since the last week of October. I've said it on this network that there's a real problem now. And I don't think people understand what the problem is, but for not only losing young people. See, the thing about young people is they don't like war. They don't like any war, probably because they're the ones that are going to have to go fight the war. So they're generally against the war to begin with. But I come from a state, Michigan, where there are 2.
Speaking of Michigan, bro, why do you have a Golden State Warriors cap on? Where's that Detroit Pistons cap, Michael? You're selling your soul out to big California. I'm not sure I can stand for that. That's where I draw the line.
200 to 300,000 voters who are either of Arabic descent or are Muslim. 200 to 300,000 Arab and or Muslim voters. And the Arab American Institute took a poll the last week of October when the real attack and slaughter started on the part of Netanyahu.
Also, I did want to get your opinion, Griffin, because Zach and I have talked about this at length, but I don't think I've got your opinion on it yet as it relates to the conversation about Gaza and foreign policy in general. Do you think if they switched Biden out for Kamala or another establishment Democrat that would, to be realistic, probably have the same position foreign policy wise, do you think that actually would, though, win back some of those voters in a state like Michigan that are just not going to vote for Joe Biden. He's Butcher Biden. He's the one responsible. The blood's on his hands. But if they transferred it to like Kamala or something, even though, I mean, we all know the blood is also still on her hands. Do you think people would kind of give her a pass because she wasn't literally the commander in chief? Do you think she could court some of those lefty voters, young voters, and Muslim American voters?
100%. And it's like, I mean, outside of even any of the specifics of what we've kind of heard from Kamala's people lately, which has been a lot of actually really good things, not necessarily related to Gaza, but like related to like potential VP picks for Kamala and stuff like that. They just like, her team just seems like 20 years younger. They're still fucking neolibs. They're still fucking soulless husks, but they're just 20 years younger than these fucking Biden fucking freaks. I mean,
it's because Biden couldn't get any talent.
I mean, it's pretty easy to make basically anyone look better than Biden because I mean the Biden team and the people running it now are fucking more radical than fucking ISIS, like in my opinion. Like they are like, not only like have they just like slaughtered potentially 100,000 fucking people in Gaza, but like the way that they are going to war with the Democratic Party, like I was texting you guys, like they have created a ISIS-like caliphate against the rest of the Democratic Party, and it seems like they're going to like take the ship down with them. Like there was a quote from a senator anonymously recently that was like, they chose the hard way, and they're still going out. Like they're taking the hard way out. I mean, they're so radical. Like
yeah,
it's just absurd. So basically, anyone I think could look better. But then when you look at Kamala, she's had a lot of statements where she's like, I mean, she stayed out of a lot of like the easy shit. She wouldn't go out there and be like, I'm making up I don't trust the numbers. I don't trust the letters. I don't trust the hospitals. Like I think even if functionally the war were to remain in the same place, just like even on a PR level, it would be a lot better.
Well, she's also able to articulate herself. Later on, I have a clip pulled for us that we can react to of Kamala when she's talking about the Supreme Court decision and how Joe Biden has kind of neglected because he's been so underwater with his horrible debate performance and then his horrible interview with George Stephanopoulos and the polling going bad and the donors calling for him to step down and all that shit. He hasn't responded in a meaningfully robust way other than saying that he was going to accept the fucking ruling. So basically, saying that he was going to grab his ankles and bend over a barrel and let the Supreme Court do whatever the fuck they wanted. There's actually Kamala Harris, who, of course, it's a big nothing burger, right? She's not actually going out here to combat the Supreme Court, right? But it feels like something because the bar is, again, so low that just having her come out and articulate some level of dissatisfaction, some level of frustration, it makes you feel a little more seen than you're ever going to with Joe Biden.
Yeah, at least she gives like a coherent voice to people's frustrations,
which is crazy because all we did for the past 4 years was dogpile how unlikable she was and how she had such a horrible media presence. But in comparison now, Joe Biden's fallen so far. I think anybody that you put up there will perform honestly better, but I still don't think that they'll cross the threshold to defeat Donald Trump. And my last question for you on this topic, Griffin, is that do you think it's over? Do you think that it's going to be for sure just Joe Biden, Kamala Harris on the ticket, and they're going to lose? It's Titanic.
No, I think the opposite. I think that he's chosen the hard way out, and we're about to watch a very crazy week unfold. Essentially, what's happened is all of the Congress is about to return to D.C. tomorrow. So tomorrow is the fly-in day. So not a whole lot's going to happen in the morning, but people are going to start getting together in the afternoon and the evening, and you're going to start hearing crazy stuff Monday night. And then Tuesday, it's going to be a slaughterhouse. I think that what's about to happen is going to be an unprecedented week in history. It's all been on pause because of the 4th of July holiday weekend where all this went down. And so everyone's just been playing like phone tag and like texting each other. But now everyone's going to be in the same room and shit is about to go down. There are massive revolts happening, not only with senators, with congressmen, but also with the fucking mega donors. And I mean, this is why this is like the Biden ISIS to me. I mean, it is totally absurd. Like Nixon gave up after a certain point. Like this is like them like digging their closet, and I think it's gonna be wild.
What do they do then? What happens? Because to me, the only path out of a Biden, nomination was for him to step down, for him to come out and say to the American people, I am no longer running for president. I am stepping down. I'm not saying that that's impossible, but to me, it seems like his entire camp is signaling that that's not going to happen. So what does the hard way look like? How do those senators who waited until the last minute, who didn't see the, forest from the trees until it was almost too late, like how are they going to force this hard way? Because to me, the hard way is watching Joe Biden faceplant and lose like fucking 30 states.
Yeah, I mean, I like they could like push him over. That would stop him. Like I don't actually know the mechanics because we are in uncharted territory. But like, do I think that everyone's about to fall in line over the next 48 hours? No. And I think that this is a slow like bleed out that like a campaign just can't keep going through week after week. I think that the holiday weekend really put people in a certain mindset. I think the administration is radical enough to think they can keep doing this. But I do think that we've hit a crazy moment. And I do want to say I have been thinking a lot about this, and I do find it interesting because one criticism of the libs and the Democrats is that, they don't really care about winning. If Trump wins, then you know what, their fundraising goes up and it's easier to be the opposition party because the Democrats don't really want to get anything done. And what's actually nice to see in this moment is a lot of Democrats actually do want to win. Like a lot of people in office right now are actually like, fuck this. We want to win. Like we don't want to just be like running against Trump for the next 4 years. Like we actually do care about a few things, and that's not everyone. But it is nice to see that some of them are that way. So that's
well.
Nice
They want. I mean, a lot of those people, they do want to keep their jobs too because it's their job on the line. I feel like when people say those lines that you just repeated about how Democrats are fine to be not in a position of power, that's true, but only for the ones that hold on to their seats. Like Nancy Pelosi doesn't mind just being in power as long as the Republicans control the Congress. But she's still going to have her job. Same with all these other people. But now when we're talking about congressional candidates whose races are being tied to Joe Biden by their opponents and they're being associated with Joe Biden, yeah, they might actually be in jeopardy of losing their seats, their political futures because of him. And I think that's probably where the knives really start to come out. But yeah, I do agree with you. It's nice to see some people that are actually like, yo, I thought we were serious about this. I thought democracy was on the line. Maybe we should actually get our shit together. Like we were just throwing up that tweet earlier on screen from Rob Reiner, who was basically saying that. And I see this from basically all the Democrats calling on Biden to step down. It doesn't even really have anything to do with like what the next Democratic president is going to do as president. It's just like, yo, we got to beat Donald Trump and Joe Biden can't do it.
Yeah. And really quickly, let me have you. Oh shit! Sorry, Griffin. Let me have you guys take a quick look at this one because I think it just shows how far the ball or how far the bar is, right? Because this is what people like Rob Reiner are looking for. They're just looking for this, and this is a bunch of word salad. It doesn't mean anything. She's not going to war for the American people. But boy, if you compare it to anything that Joe Biden said, it's at least coherent. So let's take a look at this really quick.
Sadly, the press has not been covering it as much as they should in proportion to the seriousness of what just happened. When the United States Supreme Court essentially told this individual who has been convicted of 34 felonies that he will be immune from essentially...
Who the fuck is she sitting next to?
Some lady from the Hunger Games, I think.
Yeah,
I was like, what is this? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
it's the trans Jedi from the Acolyte.
DEI Jedi.
You got a problem with that? You got a problem with DEI Jedi?
Yeah, no. It's
Okay.
it looks like they are filming this at your child's elementary school.
He has told us he is prepared to engage in if he gets
They cut to the
back into
crowd.
the
It's
White
all
House.
children. It's all babies.
Understand what we all know. In 122 days, we each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in.
She seems fired up in a way I haven't seen in a while. She must know that. She must smell the blood in the water. She knows what's about to go down.
So much pressure on her right now. She's loving it though.
Hard-won freedoms and rights. When I talk about
Yeah, crank it. I can't hear her.
Yes, they took me in a stroller as they were marching and shouting for justice, knowing that justice will not be achieved unless we are prepared to march and shout and fight for it. And one of the ways we do that...
She fucked up her delivery at the end. And fight for it.
Yeah.
Man, we've all been there.
Yeah, we'll send her back to the vocal coach. But other than that, it looked great. You know, it looked great. I loved it. I mean, the power suit, it looked great. You're right. She has a quiet confidence to her, which would also show, you know, how she might do in the pressure of the presidency. You know, this is a high pressure moment for her. She basically just has to chill. She has to still pretend she likes Biden and just chill and wait for her moment. But she might be president.
I think that if it's not Biden, it has to be Kamala. I don't think there's any outcome at this point where they get away with putting somebody in with a both Biden not on board. He's dragging his feet. And then you also want to, you know, toss to the side the sitting vice president, who happens to be a youthful, young, in comparison to the rest of the geriatric fucking bench, black woman. I don't think it's going to happen. But I also don't think that Kamala can beat Donald Trump in November. Do you guys think she can?
Well, okay, I've been thinking a little bit about that. And like, I don't know, the polling kind of sucks for her right now because they've been like hiding her for like 4 fucking years and not hyping her up at all, giving her impossible jobs. So her shit's all fucked in terms of like any kind of national reputation. Like she'd have to kind of build that over the next like couple months.
That could be good though, because it sort of gave people a break from her.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, it actually turned out to be the greatest gift to her because now she's not attached to any of the fucking
Clean
genocide
slate.
shit.
Yeah.
And so total clean slate. But then I was also thinking about it and I was like, you know, everyone like wants to be like with Trump on the debate stage, like, you're a liar, sir, or whatever. And I think it'd be much better to just have like Kamala super pilled out, just fucking in the
Off
zone.
the zoinkies.
Just like she's kind of like, you know, when you walk by someone, they're kind of like leaning over, like just on the sidewalk, and you keep walking. Like she needs to be kind of leaning. She's got that. She's vibing, and like I think that like that's the only way to really defang Trump is be like, haha, like I don't even know what's going on with this guy.
I actually do think it's not a terrible idea for her to lean into the wine mom energy a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like I think she could balance the two. At the same time, you know, being kind of the prosecutor, prosecuting the case against Donald Trump when necessary. But I would advise her to kind of lead into the wine mom thing a little bit too when it's appropriate. I think people would like that. It would, you know, make her a little bit more relatable and feel less scripted. And you're right, Trump's not necessarily used to that sort of dynamic. He's used to someone trying to like out serious him and be like, I'm a serious leader. You're a bad person.
Instead of like, and the other thing is, I actually realized this recently. Kamala is the only person that can keep up with producing nonstop quotes the way Trump can. Like the way that Trump is just a quote machine, Kamala has that energy. I mean, how many quotes has she had in just pop out even in the last 2 weeks? I mean, I think that it would actually be fun. Like every month she would be coming up with some new phrase that then would like be on t-shirts and yard signs. And you know what? We need some new yard signs because we've had to remove some of the lettering on the old ones, like, you know, immigrants are welcome and, you know, human rights and stuff like that. We've had to put some white out, paint over parts of the yard sign. So get some Kamala quotes on there.